The best actor married me out of spite after a quarrel with his first love. For 3 years of marriage, they were entangled, hugging and kissing on set, whispering sweet nothings during interviews. Online, everyone said I was a pitiful stand-in. I never got angry, just smiled and helped him clarify each rumor. Until later, when I accidentally got pregnant and secretly aborted the child. He was furious and heartbroken, harshly questioning me. Why? I gently stroked his brow and calmly answered, "Because I don't love you. The one I love is your deceased brother." Chapter 1. The whole world knew that Edward married me just to make Jasmine jealous. They had a fight and broke up before their wedding, and Jasmine left the country out of spite. Edward didn't chase after her. Instead, he turned around and married me. I wore a wedding dress that wasn't meant for me, marrying a man who didn't love me. Everyone said that once Jasmine came back, Edward would toss me aside. But in the 3rd year of our marriage, it seemed like Edward had started to like me. He made me breakfast, coaxed me out of bed, and when I acted playfully, he kissed my lips. During our sweetest moments, we clung to each other passionately. In the darkness of the night, he seduced me with a soft voice. "My love, give me a child, one just as sweet as you." We seemed like an ordinary, loving couple, until the day I truly became pregnant. Before I had the chance to tell Edward, Jasmine returned. That day, they made up. Chapter 2. The day Jasmine returned to the country, her classmates had a reunion. I heard her family had gone bankrupt, and she was asking people for loans everywhere. When Edward and I walked in, we saw a rich male classmate forcing Jasmine to drink. He said, "Drink 1 glass, and I'll lend you 100,000. Jasmine's tears were flowing as she choked on the alcohol, but she still smiled and drank it all. When she saw Edward, she suddenly panicked, probably feeling embarrassed, and quickly lowered her head. Someone teased, "Jasmine, if you need money, why don't you ask Chan, the big movie king? With your past relationship, if you sleep with him again, he surely won't treat you badly." Edward glanced over coldly and slowly said, "Don't disgust me," with a cigarette in his mouth. He leaned on my shoulder and continued, "If anyone dares to upset my wife, they can get lost." Everyone laughed, calling me sister-in-law and saying they were so envious of how much Edward cherished me. No one knew that if Jasmine hadn't suddenly appeared, Edward wouldn't have come today. Jasmine stared at me, biting her lip hard, holding back tears. The man who had forced her to drink put his hand on her shoulder and rubbed it. He asked, "What now? Looks like the big movie king doesn't want you anymore. But it's okay if he doesn't want you. I do. If you're willing to strip and make me happy in bed, I'll give you some pocket money. How about that?" Edward stubbed out his cigarette, feeling uncomfortable, and his expression turned cold. He still felt sorry for her. Jasmine, holding back her tears, looked up at Edward and softly said, "I don't want to. In this life, I've only loved one person. Even if he doesn't want me anymore, I won't let anyone else touch me." Edward's hand suddenly tightened, hurting me. The male classmate, feeling insulted, chuckled and cursed Jasmine for being shameless. "You think you're some kind of virtuous woman? Damn it. You don't appreciate kindness. Tonight, I'm going to have you anyway." He grabbed Jasmine and started dragging her outside. She was drunk and weakly struggled against him. Edward's eyes were locked on Jasmine. I could tell that for her. He was ready to kill. Just before they left, Edward couldn't hold back any longer. He stepped forward and kicked the man holding Jasmine to the ground. He pinned the guy down and started beating him, with bloodshot eyes. He cursed viciously, "If you dare touch Jasmine again, I'll cut off your filthy hands." The scene descended into chaos. Someone was filming, and I quickly grabbed Edward's sleeve, trying to stop him. He turned around and coldly asked, "Do you think you can control me?" I froze for a moment and quietly let go. Jasmine rushed over, hugging him, crying, "Edward, don't fight because of me. If you get hurt, it'll break my heart. I was so scared just now, scared that you would really leave me." Edward didn't push her away. He held her tightly, protecting her. Everyone was watching as he took Jasmine away, and left me behind. Chapter 3. That night, Edward didn't come home. At midnight, Jasmine posted a message on social media. You said you would never hold anyone else's hand again. The picture attached was of two hands intertwined. The man in the picture had a mole on the back of his hand, just like Edward, and I was the someone else he would never hold hands with again. 10 minutes later, that social media post went viral. My haters left comments for Jasmine saying, "Keep going. Sis, you and Chan the movie king are the perfect match. You two must get back together. I don't care about morals anymore. I support Chan cheating. I just can't stand Melissa. That scheming bitch." Many people were waiting to laugh at me. Some even left messages for Edward, saying, "Bro, that's not you, is it? I've been your fan for so many years, and I can tell how much your wife cares for you. Please don't betray her." Edward and I were tied to many endorsement deals as a couple, and the breach fees were astronomical. A scandal was the last thing we needed. The agent couldn't reach Edward, so they called me instead, asking me to think of a way to fool the public and say that Edward and I were together. I scrolled through my album and realized how few photos I had with Edward. In those few photos, I was the only one smiling. After carefully picking one, I posted a picture from long ago, where Edward was sitting under a lamp, reading a book. The soft light enveloped him, looking just like the person I often cried over in my dreams. As soon as I posted it, netizens began leaving comments. "Look, old Chan is at home with his wife. Anyone who says he's cheating, I'll shut their mouth." Everyone started cursing Jasmine, calling her shameless and an attention seeker. But a few minutes later, Edward shared Jasmine's social media post. Under that picture of their intertwined hands, he wrote, "It's me." He openly admitted they were together, exposing my false defense. Once again, for Jasmine, he discarded me. Jasmine's fans flooded my social media, mocking me, trying to act cool, and got slapped in the face. "This feels so satisfying, you liar. Sis Jasmine gave you 3 years, and you still couldn't win over Chan's heart. You're useless. Who said I wanted Edward's heart? I deleted every trace of him from my phone. I wanted a divorce." Chapter 4. The next morning, the company called me back to deal with Edward's scandal. Unfortunately, as soon as I arrived, I ran into Jasmine. It seemed Edward couldn't bear to leave her alone, so he brought her along. The moment she saw me, she apologized. "Sister Melissa, I'm sorry for last night. I was drunk and posted recklessly on social media. Edward was just messing around with me, causing you trouble. I've already talked to him. He's always thinking about me and not about you. Such a blockhead, right?" Those comments online were so harsh, calling you my substitute, which is just hilarious. They don't even know how much I want to thank you for taking care of Edward all these years. She smiled sweetly at me. I smiled back at her. I'm Edward's wife. It's a wife's duty to take care of her husband. There's no need for an outsider's gratitude. But you, after being called a mistress last night, don't take it to heart. Jasmine's expression changed slightly. She scanned me from head to toe, her gaze finally resting on the ring on my hand. Smiling, she said, "Sister Melissa, you're wearing my wedding ring. It's time to return it to me." As she spoke, she reached out to grab my hand. I was annoyed and, without thinking, swung my arm, accidentally hitting her in the face. Jasmine suddenly swung her purse at me, the metal edge cutting my forehead and drawing blood. She used so much force that I felt like my ears were ringing. I raised my hand to strike back, but someone grabbed my wrist from behind. Edward appeared suddenly, warning me coldly, "Melissa, just try touching her." When I turned around, he noticed the blood on my face, paused, and frowned at Jasmine, asking, "Did you hit her?" Jasmine, with tears in her eyes, shook her head and said, "Edward, she called me a mistress and wanted to hit me. I accidentally hit her with my bag when I was trying to dodge. I didn't mean to. I'll apologize to her." The moment she started crying, Edward's heart softened. Hearing her explanation, Edward stroked her hair and praised her. "Whoever hits you, hit them back. With me here, you never need to apologize to anyone." Suddenly, I envied Jasmine. Honestly, I'm quite the crier too. But the person who used to feel sorry for me is no longer here. Agent Lee couldn't stand it anymore and pointed at me, shouting at Edward, "This is your wife. Edward, are you blind?" Hugging that pretentious coquette and not letting go. What does Jasmine have that Melissa doesn't? Have you forgotten how you said you wanted a child with Melissa? Have you forgotten how you said being with Melissa made you feel like you had a home? And now you're hurting her like this. Are you sure you won't regret it in the future? Instinctively, I touched my belly. Inside me was a tiny life just beginning to form. Edward chuckled, glancing at me indifferently, without a hint of emotion. He spoke calmly. "Maybe I liked Melissa before, but now Jasmine is back. No Melissa. No Melissa Lee. No Melissa Wong can stand in my way. In the past, Edward might have liked me briefly, faintly, but now that Jasmine was back, he was going to love her." I took off the ring that didn't belong to me and handed it back to Edward. Edward's smile slowly faded. After a moment of silence, he reached out to take it. Lee grabbed my arm, glanced at my belly, and gave me a meaningful look. "Melissa, don't be foolish. You're all ready." Jasmine interrupted her, snatching the ring from Edward's hand. She slid it onto her finger but found the band a bit tight. Her smile stiffened slightly before she raised her hand and tossed the ring into the trash. She clung to Edward's arm, acting cute. "Forget it. Don't be mad for my sake. I think that ring is dirty now since another woman wore it. I don't want it anymore." Edward ignored her, his eyes fixed on me as he asked in a deep voice, "You're already what?" I glanced at him lightly and turned to leave. "Edward, I'm pregnant, but you don't need to know." Chapter 5. Edward is an extremely perceptive person, with Agent Lee's hints being so obvious. I think he can probably guess about 70 to 80% of the truth. I've been taking medication for a long time, which has weakened my body and could affect the baby's development. This pregnancy was an accident, and the doctor advised me to terminate it. I didn't want this baby to become a reason for me to stay entangled with Edward. Before the abortion, I moved out of the house to avoid seeing him and prevent any trouble he might cause. Although, most likely, Edward doesn't care at all. He didn't come looking for me and was living his life just fine. Lee sent me a video. It was from an auction, where Edward gifted Jasmine a stunning diamond ring, and she jumped into his arms with a bright smile. They were the perfect couple, right? How could I forget? Edward had said it himself. Jasmine was back. Whether it was Melissa or Melissa's child, they had to step aside. Good for him. Chapter 6. The day before the procedure, I suddenly felt a strong sense of unease. I remembered that the jade Buddha pendant my mother had prayed for before she passed away was still in the safe at home, so I decided to go back and get it. When I arrived, I realized the door code had been changed. I stood at the door of my own home, unable to get in, and suddenly felt quite pathetic. Suppressing my anger, I called Edward, but the person who answered the phone was Jasmine. She immediately started laughing smugly. "Sister Melissa, today is my birthday." Edward insisted on taking me to watch the meteor shower, "so we won't be coming back tonight." I once told him that lovers who make a wish upon a meteor will be together forever. I can't believe he remembered. I'm so happy, but I can't give you the code. After all, we're not home, and it wouldn't be right for an outsider like you to enter. I hung up the phone without saying another word and opened the keypad. Entering today's date, the door opened. The code was Jasmine's birthday. Inside, all traces of my life had been wiped clean. The wedding photo of Edward and me on the TV stand had been replaced with one of him and Jasmine. In that photo, they still looked so young. Edward was holding Jasmine, smiling happily. The succulents I had been growing were thrown out, pots and all. My study had been turned into Jasmine's piano room. I froze for a moment before rushing into the bedroom and opening the closet, which was now filled with a whole row of lacy lingerie. None of it was mine. The safe was at the bottom, and I shakily pressed my fingerprint to open it. I took out all the jewelry, cash, and documents inside, but no matter how hard I looked, I couldn't find the jade Buddha pendant my mother had left me. It was the only thing my mother had left for me, and Jasmine knew that. So, she had thrown it away. Chapter 7. Jasmine always hated my mother and me. Back when we were in school, my mother worked as a housekeeper at Edward's house. Jasmine would come over to play with her parents, and the first time we met, Edward's parents introduced me to them. They said I was obedient, sensible, hardworking, and very smart. Jasmine pretended to be friendly, saying she wanted to be friends with me. Behind my back, she said, "So what if she's good at studying? She'll work hard to get into a good university, but she'll still end up working for us. She's disgusting, and her mother's even worse. Always smiling like an idiot. What's a poor old maid so happy about? A poor woman giving birth to a little poor girl makes me sick." When my mom would pick me up from school and run into Jasmine, she would smile and call my mom a bitch in English. My mom didn't understand and would praise Jasmine, saying how pretty and cute she was, and even gave her homemade baked sweet potato chips. Jasmine would turn around and throw them in the trash, laughing at my mom. Ugh, what a stench. Even dogs wouldn't eat this. My mom, embarrassed and at a loss, would blush and lower her head, causing everyone around to burst out laughing. I threw down my backpack and went to pull Jasmine's hair. When my mom saw me getting beaten, she rushed over to shield me, but Jasmine's friend kicked her, knocking her down. Blood suddenly poured out from under her. That day, my mom was diagnosed with uterine cancer. Those terrible cancer cells had crept in unnoticed and quietly took my mother's life. That jade pendant was something my mom secretly prayed for on Ling Mountain before she died. Bowing with each step as she went, she told me that the Buddha on Ling Mountain was the most powerful. I held back my tears and asked her why. She smiled and said it was a secret and couldn't tell me. But I already knew. When I was little, I had a serious illness, and my mom had gone to Ling Mountain to pray for Buddha's protection. She made a vow that she would give up half of her life in exchange for my health and safety. Later, my illness was cured. The powerful Buddha took my mother away. When Jasmine found out, she mocked my mom, saying, "Poor people and their stupid superstitions. What's the use of keeping a piece of junk? Why not sell a kidney or liver instead and get some money for her daughter?" Chapter 8. At 2 in the morning, Edward returned with Jasmine. As they walked in, Jasmine clung to Edward's neck, whining, "Edward, stay with me tonight, okay? I want to give myself to you." As she said this, she leaned in to kiss him, but Edward turned his head away. I sat on the couch, watching Jasmine's shameless behavior. Edward's gaze fell on me. Jasmine paused, turned around, and, seeing me, smiled provocatively. "Sister Melissa, if I'd known you were home, I would have asked Edward to come back earlier. We didn't see the meteor shower tonight, and he was worried I'd be disappointed, so he insisted on taking me to set off fireworks." Sister Melissa, I'm so sorry. Blame me if you must, but don't be mad at Edward. I had drunk a little, so I stood up, dizzy and unsteady, and walked toward her. I asked directly, "Where's my jade pendant?" Jasmine blinked nervously but kept smiling. "Are you talking about the pendant in the safe? When I was tidying up, I accidentally broke it. It didn't seem valuable, so I threw it away." Tears immediately streamed down my face, and in an instant, I felt ice cold from head to toe. My lips trembled uncontrollably. All I could think about was that afternoon when my mother died. How she had held me tightly, wiping my tears over and over again. She had told me not to be afraid, that she wasn't leaving. She said she had already made an agreement with Buddha. As long as the pendant is here, so is your mom. I threw my glass at Jasmine, and it shattered on the marble floor, sending shards flying and cutting her leg. She panicked, took 2 steps back, and hid behind Edward, crying pitifully. "It hurts." I grabbed her by the collar, hysterically shouting, "Where did you throw it? Where did you throw it?" Edward stepped in to stop me, but I slapped him and shouted, "We're not even divorced yet. Who gave you the right to bring her back here? Who gave you the right to let her touch my things? Who gave you the right? You're that eager to sleep with her? Edward, aren't you disgusting?" He roughly embraced me, stroking my hair, his voice low and overpowering mine as he said, "Melissa, calm down. I'll help you find your pendant, okay? Just stop crying. Please stop crying. It breaks my heart to see you like this." Chapter 9. Jasmine threw away my jade pendant this morning, so it probably hasn't been disposed of yet. Edward sped through the streets, driving me to the landfill. He helped me dig through the trash. A man who was once such a neat freak, no longer caring about the dirt or the stench, his hands covered in filth. From dusk until dawn, we searched, but I found nothing. As the sun rose, I suddenly felt utterly helpless. The golden light on the horizon stung my eyes, and I bit my lip, holding back my tears. I clenched my teeth, refusing to let myself cry. An old couple who worked at the dump, feeling sorry for me, came over to help us search. Finally, just as I was about to give up, the old woman called out to me, "Girl, come over and see if this is what you're looking for." I jumped up so quickly that my head spun, but I didn't care. I pulled my shoes out of the garbage pile and ran over. The old lady was holding a sandalwood box. Inside, the jade pendant was broken into pieces. It was my jade pendant, but it was truly shattered. I should have been happy. At least I found it. At least I found it. I tried to smile, but as soon as the corners of my mouth moved, big, heavy tears started to fall. "Mom, you said as long as the pendant is here, you are too, right? But now it's broken. Will you still be here? Can you please not leave, not abandon me?" Edward reached out and pulled me into his arms, trying to comfort me. "Don't be sad. I'll find someone to fix it." I pushed him away, shaking my head. "It's fine. There's no need." After a moment, Edward's voice turned cold. Through clenched teeth, he cursed. "Melissa, every time you tell me it's fine, I swear I want to strangle you. Can't you rely on me? Just once? Will that kill you?" I stared at him silently. Suddenly, Edward's phone rang. It was Jasmine calling. He hesitated for 2 seconds before answering. Jasmine was crying on the other end. "Edward, I wanted to come and apologize properly to Sister Melissa, but I got lost, and some guy has been following me. I'm so scared." Edward no longer cared about me. He turned and walked away. Just then, I received a text message from the hospital. Today was the day of my scheduled abortion. On Jasmine's birthday, I lost both my mother and the child I'd never meet. Chapter 10. Before entering the operating room, the anesthesia began to take effect. I drifted into a dream filled with memories. When I was 16, through my own efforts, I got accepted into the best high school in the country. I ended up in the same school as Jasmine, Edward, and the boy I loved. That's when my nightmare began. I didn't understand why Jasmine liked to bully me so much. She and her friends would stick chewed gum in my hair, throw used sanitary pads into my backpack. They would trip me as I walked by. They even poured dirty water over my head when I went to the bathroom. I didn't just sit there and take it. The teachers knew, but they never did anything about it. One day, I had bad cramps from my period. I had just taken out some painkillers when Jasmine snatched them away. She smiled sweetly and told me to kneel and beg for them. I clenched my teeth, enduring it, but the waves of pain were unbearable. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to hold on and would have to surrender to Jasmine. The other students were betting on how many minutes I could last. I looked at the stack of red 100 yuan bills on the table and couldn't help but cry. Suddenly, someone leaned against my desk, casting a shadow over me. He picked up the money, counted it, and smirked. "Not bad. I'll take this as a tribute to your grandpa." As I watched him pocket the money, no one dared say a word. He crooked his finger at Jasmine, still smiling, but it was a cold smile. "Give me the pills. I'm adopting this little sick duck. From now on, she belongs to me. Anyone touches her, I'll deal with them. Everyone got that?" He was Edward's rebellious brother, always getting into trouble, never learning anything useful. I used to really dislike him, but today, he helped me out. I guess it was because he was always covered in bruises from fighting with others. The adults at home never asked why, only punished and scolded him. Only my mom secretly cared, applying ointment to his wounds. Maybe he was repaying her. From that day on, this little sick duck had her own loyal caretaker. When I woke up from the anesthesia, Agent Lee was holding my hand. She had been crying a lot, and I asked her why. She said I had been talking in my sleep for a long time. She asked me, "Where is that boy you loved?" I looked at the tall building opposite and closed my eyes. I whispered softly, He He flew away with the wind. Chapter 11. I turned off my phone and disappeared for half a month. According to Agent Lee, Edward had been going crazy trying to find me. The first thing I did after leaving the hospital was to bring him the divorce papers. Edward was silent for a moment, then gave a cold, bitter laugh. He glanced briefly at the papers, tossing them onto the coffee table. Before looking slowly at my stomach, he asked, in a drawn-out tone, "Before the divorce, isn't there something else we haven't talked about?" I smiled calmly and answered, "There was before, but now, no, I've taken care of the child. So don't worry, you have nothing to be concerned about." Edward's pupils trembled, and he froze for a couple of seconds. He lowered his head and suddenly started laughing. "Melissa, you disappeared for half a month just to do this? Really? I was afraid you'd be upset. So I went all over the country to find an expert to repair the jade pendant. And this is how you treat me?" He grabbed me, pulling me down onto the sofa, trapping me beneath him. His voice was harsh as he asked, "Why would you do this to me? How could you dare? How could you be so cruel?" I suppose it's because I was too obedient in the past. Everyone thought I was madly in love with Edward, including him. I looked up at his face and gently touched his brow and eyes. I calmly told him, "Edward, the person I love has never been you. The way you throw your tantrums, it's really ugly. You're becoming less and less like him." Finding a stand-in did bring me some comfort at first, but over time, I realized, whether Edward smiled or didn't smile, he wasn't him. Even his embrace wasn't as warm as his. I was tired of it. Edward knew exactly who I was talking about. His tears suddenly fell, landing on my cheek. "I guess the longer you live, the more strange things you see." The once proud Edward, who hadn't even cried the day Jasmine left, was shedding tears today, for me. How amusing, how disgusting. I told him, "Don't feel wronged. The start of our relationship was a transaction, wasn't it? You used me as a tool to spite her, and I used you as a substitute to distract myself. We don't owe each other anything." Before I could finish, Edward cut me off. His eyes reddened, and in that moment, he looked like a lost puppy. He said, "Melissa, you have no right to say we don't owe each other anything. Do you know that when I gave Jasmine that ring, I wasn't happy at all? I tried so hard to love her like before, but all I could think about was you. When you disappeared, I would wake up in a panic in the middle of the night. Melissa, you made me fall in love with you, and now you're telling me we don't owe each other anything? To hell with that." As he spoke, he grabbed my face, his expression like a fierce wolf, threatening through gritted teeth. "Want a divorce? You're dreaming." Jasmine, who had been eavesdropping from the room, pushed the door open and stumbled out. Standing in the middle of the living room, looking lost, she choked up and asked in a small voice, "Edward, what are you saying?" Chapter 12. Just as Edward was about to stand up, I grabbed his tie, pulling him closer to me. I caught a glimpse of Jasmine clenching her fists, and I smiled. I asked Edward, "Back in school, even though we weren't in the same class, you must have known how Jasmine bullied me, right? We don't have to get divorced, but I want you to take back all the money you gave her to pay off her debts. Right now. Make her leave this house." Jasmine panicked, crying as she spoke. "Edward, everyone has moments of immaturity, right? Besides, you know I was just joking with Sister Melissa. If she's angry, I'll apologize to her, okay?" As she spoke, she knelt down, begging, "Sister Melissa, Edward is all I have. Please don't take him away from me, okay? Edward, you know how terrifying those debt collectors are. If you really leave me, if you take that money back, I could be." Edward frowned, staring into my eyes for a long time before finally saying, "I'm sorry. He's always like this. He says he loves me, but when it comes to making a choice, he always sides with Jasmine." I laughed and cursed at him. "Then why were you pretending to be so damn affectionate in front of me just now? You don't need to apologize. I was just messing with you. Edward, who you love is none of my business." Edward's gaze filled with pain for a moment, then slowly grew cold, and he pushed me away. He walked over to Jasmine and gently pulled her into his arms, softly comforting her. "It's okay. Don't be scared. It's all my fault for saying those things. No matter who I don't want, I will never not want you. I promise." Jasmine pounded his shoulders with her fists, crying pitifully, but still clung to his neck, not daring to let go. Seeing how terrified she was, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction inside. Chapter 13. The day Edward and I got divorced. Jasmine was there too. She held Edward's hand tightly, as if afraid that I might somehow seduce him with sweet words and steal him away. When we finally received our divorce certificates, she visibly let out a sigh of relief. While Edward went to get the car, she came over to provoke me again. "During the time we were apart, you got to be Mrs. Chon for 3 years. Just consider it a gift from me, Melissa. Remember this, you'll always be the little poor girl born to that old poor woman. From now on, watch your back. I'll make sure to play you to death." I reached out and grabbed her hair, making her scream in pain. Smiling, I whispered in her ear, "Jasmine, I have evidence of your murder." Her face turned pale with panic in an instant. Satisfied with her reaction, I continued, "But don't worry, I'm not as cruel as you. I don't want you dead. I just want you to live a fate worse than death." Chapter 14. After we officially announced our divorce, Edward couldn't shake off the label of having cheated during our marriage. But he didn't care. He's a male celebrity, a movie king. Scandals like this don't really hurt him. There will always be people who choose to forgive him. He began appearing at public events with Jasmine, promoting her, getting her roles, and clearing her name. Edward has money and influence, so little things like this were easily taken care of. The next time we met, Jasmine had already finished filming a big-budget movie and was making her grand comeback. Tonight was an elder's birthday banquet, and since I was invited, I had to attend. Just as I arrived at the entrance of the hall, I saw Jasmine holding onto Edward's arm, greeting me. "Sister Melissa, long time no see. I heard you're working on a niche film lately? Having some trouble? Seems like your resources have downgraded quite a bit." In front of Edward, Jasmine always acted sweet and innocent. She had apparently forgotten the time I told her I would make her life worse than death. Maybe because nothing had happened so far, she thought I was just bluffing. Lee couldn't stand it and snapped at her. "If you don't know what you're talking about, don't say anything. A niche film doesn't mean downgraded resources. The director has won international awards. You're going to offend people by saying things like that." Jasmine's expression faltered, but she quickly smiled again, leaning softly against Edward's arm. She said playfully, "It doesn't matter if I offend anyone. I have my husband. After all, that's how we've always been. I get into trouble, and he fixes it. As long as he's there, I'm not afraid of anything." I couldn't be bothered to respond. After handing over my gift and signing in, I was ready to leave. Jasmine suddenly stopped me and pulled out an invitation from her purse. "Sister Melissa, I almost forgot to tell you. Edward and I are getting married in October. We'd love for you to come." Edward frowned slightly, giving her a quick side glance. No one expected me to stop, look at the pink invitation, and take it with a smile. I turned to Jasmine and chatted for a moment. "You two have done a great job keeping things quiet." I hadn't heard a word. Not like back when I was marrying your husband. He insisted on live streaming the whole thing, wanting the whole world to know we were getting married. It looked glamorous, but it was pretty annoying. Seeing the change in Jasmine's expression, I walked away, tossing the invitation into the trash on my way out. "Mr. Edward and Miss Jasmine, I sincerely hope you have an unforgettable wedding." Chapter 15. I heard that Jasmine fought with Edward for a long time about the wedding. She finally managed to change the private ceremony into a live-streamed event. She's so foolish. What's so great about a public, showy wedding? What Edward really wanted to give her was protection, but she didn't understand that. I counted the days, waiting for their wedding. After that class reunion, I received an anonymous video. An old classmate sent it to me, saying, "Bruno's death wasn't a suicide. I'm sorry I didn't tell you before. I was afraid of Jasmine's retaliation. Bruno, it's been so long since anyone mentioned his name." That night, I watched the video over and over again. I finally understood what happened on the day he fell from the rooftop. The day I had planned to confess my feelings to him. And why he died. It turns out, it was because of me. Chapter 16. On the day of Edward and Jasmine's wedding, I sat in front of the live stream, afraid I might miss their happy expressions. Jasmine wore a custom-made wedding gown, walking slowly down an aisle covered in white roses. Edward was waiting for her at the end, looking so gentle. It was fitting to say, lovers, finally united. In front of the pastor, they confessed their love, promising to remain faithful to one another, through sickness and health, never to part. The chaos started right at that moment. A video suddenly spread across the internet. The location was the school rooftop. In the video, there were two people, one clearly being a younger Jasmine, and the other a boy who looked very much like Edward. It was snowing that day, and Jasmine stood dangerously close to the edge of the rooftop. She was crying, asking the boy, "Would you rather watch me die than be with me?" The boy looked annoyed. "How many times do I have to tell you? I already like someone else. Are you deaf?" Jasmine didn't believe him, continuing to pester him. "Who is it? Who do you like? There's no one prettier than me in school. Could it be that country bumpkin Melissa? What does she have that I don't? I've liked you for 2 years. I love you so much I'd even die for you. Would she dare to do the same?" Hearing his beloved insulted, the boy smirked coldly. "Jasmine, I know exactly what kind of person you are. Your little tricks may fool Edward, but you're not good enough to play with me. I'll tell you one thing, hand over the pictures of Melissa. If you keep messing with her, I swear I'll make you pay." Jasmine stared at him, speechless. After a long pause, she suddenly looked down from the rooftop, shrugged, and laughed. "You really have no taste. Do you know how many people like me? You're just the least favored child of the Chan family. Who are you to act so arrogant with me? I'm giving you a chance, and you're throwing it away. You want Melissa's nudes? Fine. Come and get them yourself. But if you can't, don't blame me when I share them with the whole world, so every man can see what that country bumpkin is like." She pulled out a memory card from her pocket and held it high. As the boy rushed toward her, she suddenly crouched down. That day, the rooftop was so slippery, and the wind was so strong, a boy turned into a butterfly, briefly fluttering, and then flew away with the wind. I still remember how dark the sky was that day. He ruffled my hair and told me to wait for him after school so we could walk home together. I was holding the love letter I had written, blushing as I nodded. But after he left, he never came back. That love letter is still tucked away in my school bag. Chapter 17. During the live stream, someone interrupted the ceremony and showed Edward a phone. Jasmine's face changed. She grabbed Edward by the collar, crying, "Don't look, Edward, don't look. That's not real. I didn't mean it. His fall had nothing to do with me. I didn't know the rooftop would be so slippery. How could I have known he was so useless that he couldn't even stand properly?" Edward shoved her to the ground. Her diamond hairpiece fell off. Her hair came undone, and her makeup smeared all over her face. It was truly pitiful, and I found it incredibly satisfying. "Jasmine, when I said I would make your life worse than death, I wasn't just saying it." This scandal sparked a huge public outcry, and more people started coming forward online, listing all the bad things Jasmine had done over the years. Some were true, some were false. People began debating the role of social status, family background, and upbringing in shaping a child's character. Some said that there are children in this world who are born bad. I couldn't agree more. Jasmine was brought to court, convicted, and severely sentenced. No one could save her. Edward was also affected, banned from the industry, and disowned by the Chan family. The funniest part was how the people who used to hate Bruno, even after his death, cursing his parents, suddenly appeared on screen, acting like they cared. They talked about what a good, filial child Bruno was, how he had a bad temper but was a good person at heart. Their tears seemed real enough, but they didn't even know what kind of flowers Bruno liked. His grave was covered in chrysanthemums, and I had to go several times to clear them all out. He always hated chrysanthemums. He was so picky, always saying they smelled bad. I cleaned up his little space and sat by his side, basking in the sun. I wanted to talk to him, but what should I say? Let me think. I guess I'll tell you something you never got to hear, how much I liked you.